and welcome to Pulp Mythos. I'm Brian here with Larry and Spencer, and we are going to be discussing the very polarizing episode of Dexter New Blood, the season slash, I guess, series finale, at least as far as Dexter is concerned. um, if you've not hit the sub button, please do so. Lots of other content on the channel. Hit the like, leave a comment, let us know if you agree or disagree with what we're about to say in this review. And yeah, full spoilers. Here we go. So yeah, Dexter Morgan is gone. He is killed in the end, and we're gonna jump right into that because that seems to be the biggest um, portion of the episode that has everyone polarized. Whether they think it works, it's great, or they hate it. So in terms of the story, in my opinion, and then I'll pass it off to you guys. To me, it makes sense. The whole point of bringing this show back was to people were annoyed with how the last series ended. You know, the fact that he just sort of went away. There was no real closure. So we knew going into this, the idea was to have some form of closure with the character. And then the title New Blood was referring to a next generation, essentially, that being Harrison. Dexter got his end, you know. Um, it made complete sense, even, I mean, all the way down to the flashback of him sort of realizing that he is, yeah, I am a piece of shit monster. Harrison pointing out to him that you don't really care about helping people. You're just trying to satisfy your craving for murder. Harrison seems to operate by a different code. The idea that Dexter would kill an innocent person just to spare himself, Harrison's not on board with that. And that sort of seems to be the catalyst that led to him killing Dexter. Now, it's also interesting that Harrison killing Dexter, he kills this serial killer. That's almost a baptism of, as far as we know, that's his first murder. And so, you know, that brings him into the fray in terms of future possible storylines with Harrison. But for me, the way it wrapped up with Harrison and Dexter, I was completely okay with it. And of course, if they continued the series with Harrison, you could always bring Dexter in as sort of his conscience slash dark passenger if you want. But me personally, I liked it. What are your thoughts on how they presented it? How do you see it in terms of Harrison? Why he did what he did? Does it work for you? Do you understand the complaints? Do you completely disagree with them? Just what are your guys' thoughts on it?
Well, my thought, I liked it too, for one, because I mean, especially compared to the previous ending, and you know, to anyone who just thinks this is absolute garbage, is like, would you prefer the previous ending? Because I would definitely prefer this. Even if you wanted the character to live, that just doesn't seem realistic. If Dexter's going to end in some way, it would be something like this. And even if you think, oh, the character's too crafty for this, well, he kind of went out on his own terms. He did have an opportunity to get away with it, and he definitely could have. But just for him, the cost was too high, and the character was kind of tired. And as you pointed out, Brian, it's the sort of thing where he was confronted with his past, with his guilt, and with the idea that it's like, yeah, this is selfish. It is always about the dark passenger. It is always technically a craving. He just justifies it by saying, oh, I'm helping this person, I'm doing this, but he is doing it for an evil reason, and he is, and there is some collateral damage as far as innocents are concerned. And as far as Dexter's ending, it's a it's a pretty solid ending, and I think really the only other way you can end it, like unless you just wanted him to drive off into the sunset, which isn't really a real conclusion.
And I liked both endings personally. I liked the season one. I thought that it still made sense. I think they built to that ending. I know it wasn't a whole lot of closure. It wasn't everybody's favorite, but the way this that season ran, they were building up to something like that happening. So it wasn't a letdown for me. Uh, and I liked the final season of the original Dexter. I think that this series did the exact same thing, which I think it goes back to what we said before, that people are either loving it or hating it. There's not a whole lot of in between. It's this is the worst thing ever, or this was so beautifully written, great job. But I think it kind of goes hand in hand with what you guys were saying too, is Michael C. Hall is such a good actor that no matter how awful of a human being Dexter is, because he's not a good guy. He is yes, he kills some bad people. Yes, he kills some people who deserve to die. But, Dokes didn't deserve to die. Uh, Deb didn't deserve to die. Even when you look at Rita, didn't deserve to die. Lundy, and that was, his fault. He didn't pull the trigger, but he still, a lot of the things Dexter was doing was causing a lot of these people. Uh, Maria LaGuerta, I think she deserved to die. I fucking hated her. But um, I had zero issues with this being written the way it was, because just in those last couple sentences, just like you said, Larry, he came out with it finally saying, yeah, he finally realized that he was a piece of shit. It's like he's always been battling with whether or not he was doing the right thing. And then by the end of this, he's like, you know what? You're right. I'm not good. And to me, that realization is what was written to kind of show everybody who was watching the show, who's rooting for Dexter, who's rooting for their favorite character. And I'm like, he's not a good guy. I was hoping he would live. I have and we talked about this in other reviews. I was like, it'd be great if he basically turns himself in, goes to jail, and becomes Harry from jail for Harrison. But him doing it dead isn't any different than before. And it kind of carries over that status quo from original Dexter to new Dexter. Just like Deb did in this for uh, Dexter, Dexter would do it for Harrison in future. So I had zero issues with it, and I think it played out really well.
One of the other complaints about the finale was Angel or Batista. Some people were upset that they sort of set up him to have some closure, and then they feel that they didn't follow through, that it felt sort of tacked on. Um, why even have the scene of him being called? For me, it was fine. I mean, I guess maybe they wanted to see him coming into town, or seeing, being there to see Dexter's body. I don't know exactly what specifically the people who were upset with it wanted, but I sort of see what they're saying. If you look at his full arc on this season, whether it's sort of because we had talked about it in the episode where he was at the conference. It was just sort of one of those random, oh, it just so happens that she's there and that he mentions Dexter and everything. I was fine with it, but I guess I can see some people complaining about basically his character somewhat being tacked on. Um, I don't know. What y'all think?
Yeah, he really did feel kind of tacked onto it. And, the only way to really vindicate it in any way is if there does happen to be another season. And I've got some really cool theories about that and how he could fit into that if there was, like a new season starring Harrison or something. But as far as, this series, he was kind of barely there and used, I guess, as a segue for other characters. He was so prominent in the previous show that the character feels like he deserved more time here, or at least a little more closure than what we saw.
I think that them dropping his name and him talking about his wife, and there's a lot of things that could carry over to even what Dexter was saying to Harrison, talking about how he wanted to go to someplace sunny. Let's go to LA. There's not really any indication as to where Harrison will end up. So if they wanted to continue the series, I think him ending up with Batista and kind of having Batista be the Deb for Harry and or Harrison, and then having Dexter be the Harry for Harrison also. I think that would be a kind of a cool carryover between the two. Um, because I don't know if they would carry over a lot of other characters from this series. I mean, I think it'd be cool to have Audrey in, but she didn't stand out to me at all. They could literally replace her with anybody, and it wouldn't matter to me at all. But I did like the difference in setting. So, we had the 8, 9, 12 seasons of Dexter, and they were filmed in, sunny Miami with the water and everything. I liked this series being different, being in the snow and stuff like that, because to me that was an extra obstacle that we didn't see in other, series. So I would like to see him stay up north. I'd like to see him go to like Minnesota if he wasn't in New York, or, something like that.
Yeah, it was a really cool atmosphere, like you said, the whole small town thing that's going on, and and I'd like to see more of that too. And because you had fewer people, but you had so many big personalities, and it worked out great. Fred Jr. and everybody else in the town, and heck, the entire police department, everybody in there was interesting, from Bishop to Logan to the guy that's kind of inept. But yeah, as far as where I'd like to see Batista, I guess I'll go ahead and say it, since you kind of mentioned yours too. I kind of would like to see a similar thing where he's in Harrison series, but instead of him, trying to mentor Harrison, maybe there's like a copycat killer, and Harrison is hunting the killer to kind of do what Dexter does, and Batista thinks that Harrison is the one doing it, so he's hunting Harrison while Harrison's hunting the actual killer. And
Yeah,
maybe
that'd be
that could
cool.
take place
Yeah.
in L.A. Yeah.
Yeah. That I think if you're gonna do something with Harrison, I would like. I mean, they set up him being almost like a Batman, or but a killer, I guess. But living by a strict code, not hurting innocents, and all that. And I that also seems to be one of the biggest complaints. Like, I read several comments that were like, yeah, even people who were cool with the ending, they're like, yeah, it was pretty good, but I just don't know if Harrison can carry the show. I just don't know if you can do 10 episodes of Harrison. And I think you can. I think the actor proved himself. Obviously, the character will mature even more. You wouldn't shoot it for another year or two. Uh, you know, I think it could work. I mean, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. You watch a couple episodes, you're like, yeah, I don't care for it. But I don't know. The showrunner seems excited by the idea of doing something like that. Clearly, that was being thought of based on the way this thing ended. Um, yeah, I don't think they have to wrap it up if they don't want it. I think there's enough room to continue Harrison's story, and Batista. It would be cool if he was a part of it.
I liked Harrison. The way they wrote his character, the complaint of him not being able to carry it. Not only do I not buy into that, I think that when you look at Dexter, his whole problem was not only trying to not get caught, but trying to fit in. So throughout the series, he was always uh, basically acting. So his Dexter was acting, not Michael C. Hall was acting like Dexter, but Dexter was acting like a human. And he was trying to fit in. And that was kind of the ongoing thing that carried the show, is that Dexter was always this killer behind closed doors. But Harrison has a different kind of thing to wrestle with. He's got the guilt of killing his dad now. So there's a lot of things that he will have to deal with, that I think if the same writer takes this stuff over and same director, I think that it would still be cleverly written just like this. Uh, and I just hope that they keep that same kind of little bit of humor to it, because I don't want it to all be angsty. Uh, because then it'll feel
I
almost like
think they would
a
move
movie.
past that. So my thought, because I was thinking similar. My thought on that is if you look at especially the last two episodes, he's transforming. He's finding romance. He's understanding friendships. He's bonding with his father. He watches his father kill. It's difficult for him, but then he's able to kill his father, and it's not a big deal. You know what I mean? Like, in other words, he's transforming. And so I think if you do another show, it takes place a year or two later or whatever. I don't think he would play Harrison the exact same way that he's been playing him. I think you would have him um, evolve.
Well, and it would make sense too, because now he's once again living out on his own. He'd have to mature very quickly, because he literally is by himself. He's trying to figure this shit out, at 15 years old, 16, and trying to literally fend for himself.
And we know that he tested really high. He's those genius levels and everything. So I could see you even going as far in terms of setting up a new season. He spends a couple years studying. He's studying criminal justice. He's studying, various things, and all of a sudden, you have sort of that Batman transformation. You go from that young Bruce Wayne to sort of that more mature Bruce Wayne. I think it could work. I think people are hung up on the high school aspect of him, and I'm like, yeah, but that's not going to be what it would be. I don't think.
I want him to go the Punisher route, just start killing everybody.
Yeah, I think he'll be even more calculating as Dexter, and I think a lot of people forget that it likely wouldn't be Harrison carrying the show on his own, even though we all agree that he could probably do it. That he's shown that he could possibly do it in this show. That it would be him, and it would likely be Dexter as his Harry. And not only that, we'd also potentially solve the mystery of what actually happened to his mother. That's probably true at this point. What he said, the way she died, but we get flashes of Dexter, and like for his version of like you all said, Deb, it might be his mother. We may get that, but either way, you still get the actor who's playing Dexter there. Especially if it's what I mentioned, where he's like pursuing a copycat killer. And that's maybe part of what drives Harrison to kill again, or to at least try to do with it what his father did, is because there's this copycat killer, and now he's getting those urges again, and now he's seeing his father in the same way that his father saw his father, and so on. Sort of a Sins of the Father Part 2 in a way.
What would you call the show? I was thinking about that too.
Well, actually, that may be a good title for it. You could
Sense
just
of the
call
Father.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Dexter, Sins of the Father.
that'd be
Or
cool. I'd be into that.
Ghost
Oh,
Dad.
Ghost.
Ghost Dad too.
Ghost Dad. There you go. What did y'all think of Bishop's story arc from the beginning to the end in terms of, you know, her involvement with Dexter, her taking him down? Some people complained about this too. They didn't like the fact that she was the one that figured it out. But to me, I didn't see any plot holes. To me, the way it all panned out and played out felt logical to me. Um, and yet again, because one of the biggest complaints I saw, they were like, "Well, how come she couldn't figure out Kurt was a killer?" And I said this for the last like 3 weeks. Kurt Caldwell put on a hell of a front, and you just couldn't, he was the guy, he was that guy, and everybody liked him, and so I don't, there's been plenty of serial killers throughout history who, were family men and everybody loved and knew, and they were killing for like 20, 30 years. So it's not, there's real world examples of Kurt Caldwell's. And so to me, it's not as crazy as some think it is. But, from her seeing the bodies to her, the way she took Dexter down, even to her decision to let, Harrison leave. What are your thoughts on sort of her character's arc?
Well, I want to say about that too. Like you said, not only was Kurt Caldwell, was he that guy, he also had those connections that Dexter had when he was back in Miami, where he's, like you said, tied to everything, and he's probably, whenever they make any sort of discovery in the case, he's probably talking to Logan while he's helping coach the wrestling team and everything. So he's finding out exactly what they know right away, because as we've seen in this show, Logan's a talker. He's got all these resources because he's a rich guy and he owns half the town and he has this big trucking company, so he can really throw them off. Because think about how much Dexter got away with, and Dexter's just Dexter. Kurt Caldwell is an organization. They're like, so he can work on a bigger level, and it's a lot easier for him to cover things up.
Yeah, and I had zero issues with her storyline because that was an overarching kind of plot line in Dexter itself is Dokes was onto him, and then LaGuerta was onto him, and then Deb found out. Lundy was trying to figure the cop catching him was the only thing that made sense. And with Logan, although his intentions were really good, he didn't really have a vested interest in it. When you look at what Bishop had with the, all the cases that Kurt Caldwell was responsible for, she took stake in that. Like, she was, when she finally figured it out, she took pride in the fact that she was finally going to catch him. But at the meantime, because of Molly, she was curious about Molly now. And then all the stuff Molly brought up, now she's like, oh shit, did Dexter really do these things? So now she started putting other dots together where I think she was categorizing Kurt and Dexter in the same category, which I look at that slightly different because Dexter did kill a handful of innocent people, no doubt. But Kurt was hunting, torturing, all this stuff of innocent, random people for over 20 years. And Dexter killed more than Kurt did, but I think that Bishop kind of categorized them together where both of them were living lies, and they were able to like live I don't know, behind a mask, behind a facade of great person. And I think that her taking Dexter down, all the while taking down Kurt Caldwell with the help of Dexter, also, I think it, to me, it just made sense. And for people to complain about plot holes and stuff, I get not wanting Dexter to die, and I said that from the jump. I get being upset that your favorite character is no longer there. There is ways for them to carry it on, and I really wish that people could see how well it was written and how many like kind of hints there was throughout the season. And it doesn't mean that I'm not reaching or I'm seeing something differently, but I felt like it was very well put together.
Well, yeah, and I agree with you because it's not like Angela was a bad cop or anything just because of the Kurt thing. Like we mentioned, Kurt had a number of resources that makes it a lot harder for her to catch him than it is for her to catch Dexter. And not only that, Kurt didn't have anybody in his life that slipped up. For one, we had the hint that Harrison gave to Audrey. When he's like, his name's not even really Jim Lindsay, and that kind of pushed things in a certain direction. And Dexter was, as he mentioned in the beginning of the series, out of practice. And like we've seen the resources that Kurt had. Dexter left that cabin the first time, came back to it with Angela, and it was stripped completely clean. And he had his stuff set up somewhere else. He's got too much money, and he knows too many scumbags that are willing to help him out with this to not get away with it.
Yeah, because even the dude from that looked like the Roach guy from Men in Black,
Yeah,
like he was able to help try to kidnap him.
he had
And
multiple truckers. It seems like he recruited the shadiest of the truckers that he had and had them working for him. So like it all adds up.
Yeah, I felt so. I thought it worked. Yeah, I thought it was a solid 10 episodes. I thought it had a great story arc. I thought Dexter got some legitimate closure as a character. It's one of those things where if they don't ever touch it again, fine. I think that's a solid ending. And if we want to pick up with Harrison later, or you can just build some head canon and Harrison's a vigilante out in L.A. Cool. Yeah, I think it worked. There's so many shows that end that don't work. It is difficult ending a series or especially a character, as beloved as Dexter. Look, the ratings for this season were really high. Um, Showtime does okay, but this show, I mean, this was a big deal, and so I definitely could see the suits at Showtime being like, yeah, we need more Dexter. Now, I'm going to pose a question, and I saw several people discussing this, and so I'm just going to bring it up because, yes, the showrunner said Dexter is dead. He's definitively gone there. But we all have read comic books. We've all, seen characters that should clearly be dead, not be dead. I've seen people online explaining how they could do this, they could do that. What would you say if and Dexter's lying there bleeding out and he's not dead, he survives, and he goes to prison or he escapes or whatever? How would you feel if they bring the series back and Dexter is not dead?
That would feel cheap to me. That'd feel really cheap after all this. It's I mean, I think love it or hate it, I think he dies right here. So I wouldn't like that if they're like, oh, he didn't die. He shot him in the chest, but it didn't take. They got to him in time to resuscitate him or whatever. It would just feel cheap.
Well, to me, it would end up, unless you're bringing back all these actors, uh, having to shoot that scene, I would need an explanation. Like, I would have to see it physically. I couldn't just take it like, oh, he got shot and Angela was able to stop the bleeding and they got, help to him quick enough. Because it looked like it hit him in the lung. It doesn't look like it hit him in the heart. You can collapse a lung, but he was bleeding pretty bad. So
There
him,
was a lot of debate on where, yeah, that's why I bring this up. People online have been arguing and debating where it hit him. Could you survive? And then I was just like, oh, don't do that.
I think he could have survived. I don't think that he should though, because I think that to carry on the kind of Dexter legacy, make him the Harry. There's enough in that last episode, and there's enough conversations that they had, and there's enough alluding to certain things where Harry could, or Harrison could listen to the old podcast, listen to the things that Dexter kind of instilled in him in that very short period of time. You wouldn't have as many flashbacks as you would with, Harry and Dexter, but you could make it to where that reminiscent thing is maybe back to Harrison when he was 5. He was just like, "Hey, remember when I came home late and you saw me? Blah blah blah." Well, I was, preparing this. This is how you do it. And I think they did a great job in that last episode where he was like, "You have to do this. You have to do that." He was basically walking through a kill
And
room.
and
So
Harrison could be, like you said, researching the Bay Harbor Butcher, and in his mind putting together and crafting how things played out. And obviously Dexter could be in those scenes and stuff. You absolutely could have him be a major part of the show and still be dead, and it worked.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and that's part of why I said the best, like one of the best ways I thought to continue would be with a copycat killer, because it would be Harrison indirectly learning about Dexter and having those flashbacks and having, like Spencer said, those sort of moments in his mind where he's sort of learning from Dexter but indirectly, and you have Michael C. Hall still playing the role, as he's going through it, just from his knowledge of who his father is.
Well, 10 episodes that flew by.
They really did.
They did. I was like, damn. Um, yeah. Anything else? I'm assuming if they do want to continue it, we'll know soon. Um, but yeah, any other thoughts on Dexter?
no, the only thing I think it'd be cool, whether it's the same people or not, if they brought back God, I can't remember their names now. The 2 kids, Rita's other kids.
Yeah.
Cody, was it Cody and shit? Anyway, bringing them back like that, not even the real actors, but you could have anybody be their kids, and then that could be a way that Dex or Harrison learns too. Like he tries to seek them out because that is his real half brother and half sister. So kind of including them in a little bit. Maybe something happened to the little brother after the mom died. He, went down the wrong path and he ended up dying. I think there'd be a lot of cool ways to segue it from the Dexter series without basically making it a copycat. And uh, I'd like to see more of it, but like you said, I wouldn't be upset if this is how they ended it. I enjoyed it, and I hope that people, after they stop being so upset because one of their favorite people is no longer around, just gives that the last couple episodes a rewatch. And I think that they won't be as upset once they kind of sit with it for a little while and watch it again, because there's so much foreshadowing and they did such a good job. I was really impressed with these 10 episodes.
Well, yeah, because that's what good television does oftentimes, especially if you're getting things from the perspective of a bad person. They make them likable or seem, sort of understandable in that moment. But, you gotta disconnect and go, okay, yeah, Dexter's your point of view character, so you kind of want him to get away with it. That said, he is a bad person and he's been doing this, you know, for most of his life. He's killed somebody. This is the only way this can really conclude. Just like I'm trying not to spoil any other shows. I was going to reference something,
Yeah.
but
It's like this isn't like Tony Soprano constantly ducking the FBI, and it's like he's the villain. He just does horrible things, murdering people, doing all these bad things, but you're rooting for him. You want him to get away with it. You're because he's your point of view character. And it's just it's or Breaking Bad. There's another great example.
well, yeah, that's what I was trying my hardest. That's what. But I guess if you haven't seen it by now, you have it. But that's also like saying, like, oh, I wanted Scarface to win in the end. Like, well, that's too bad. It's things were coming to a head. Like whether that was your POV character or not, or you thought, oh man, that guy's really cool. You're still watching a tragedy.
Yeah, The Shield. That's another good one. They went a little too far with that ending. I don't know if y'all watched The Shield, but that is the most tragic, horrifying final episode. But it works. It's one of those
Nope.
endings where you're devastated by it, but you're like, you know what? It makes sense. It should go down this way.
The Wire. The last episode of the fucking Wire.
Dude, that's magic. That's what that is. That is greatest, possibly the greatest show of all time. Definitely in the conversation. And yeah, hell of an ending.
I guess one day I'll know.
One day Larry will watch it. But
In
yeah,
an old,
be an
say
old
we'll be an
home.
old folks home.
We're
Did you
watching
guys see The Wire?
And what's crazy is I've seen it like more than once at this point.
Oh yeah.
And if ever, and this has happened where HBO will like run marathons, and I'll flip over and I'll see it on. I'm like, oh no. It's like I'll watch a few minutes, and it's like I watch like 10 episodes, burning through multiple seasons. But Dexter, hell of a run. I thought this was a great finale. Obviously, people disagree, and that's fine. Not everybody's going to agree on everything. That's my final word. You guys, final word?
Yeah, hell of a run, and like as you all have been saying it, well, you and Spencer have been saying it throughout the season. Like, I don't know how much time Dexter actually has left. It seemed like things were coming to a head, and I feel it's a good ending for the character, and I think in retrospect, people will see it that way.
I say, fuck all y'all. It was great.
Agreed.
That's your. Well, on that note, we can't see the thumbs down anymore. So whatever. Appreciate everyone that's been with us through this whole run. Like I said, I'd love to hear your comments, even if you disagree with us completely. I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. A lot of other content on the channel, more content coming. Snowfall is on the way. We will be covering that. Raised by Wolves is coming back. We will be covering that. Check out 1883, The Righteous Gemstones on HBO, where we'll be covering that as well. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.